This is Bill Stewart, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to install and run Syncthing as a Windows service. Now, if you haven't used Syncthing, it is an open source file synchronization tool. We can show the web page here, syncthing.net. And they do offer, you can just go and download the application. However, there's not a Windows installer that installs and runs Syncthing as a Windows service. So what I did is I went out there and I created a Windows installer for Syncthing. And you can get that at github.com/bill-stewart/Syncthing Windows Setup. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and go over to that GitHub site. And you can download the installer by going over to the releases section and finding the latest setup executable. As I record this, the latest version is 1.23.4. So you can go and click and download that file. And I do have that if you look in my downloads folder. Okay, so Syncthing as the installer. So the next step is to install the Syncthing package for all users. Now, the advantage of installing as administrator is that it will create a Windows service that will sync files even if no users are logged on. So I'm going to go over there and I'm going to double click to do the install for all users, and the shield icon indicates that it requires administrator. So I'm going to have to supply administrator permissions, administrator password, to go out there and install the package. You can see the license and next, and it's going to install on the C drive by default. It will create a start menu. On this configuration page, it's asking some details about Syncthing. The automatic upgrade will update the syncthing.exe file automatically. It will check every 12 hours to perform that. The GUI configuration page, 127.0.0.1 or localhost, means that the GUI will only be accessible on this computer where it's installed, which is an appropriate default. So I'll leave that default, and it will use TCP port 8384. So I'm going to click Next, and I do want Syncthing to start automatically when the system boots. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next. You see the installation details on this page, and go ahead and click Install. And we're also going to want to repeat the installation steps on, you can see this is client 2 over on this computer. This computer's client 1, where I just completed the install, and it's asking if I want to start the service. So I'm going to go ahead and start it. Over here on client 2, I've also downloaded the package because I have to install Syncthing on both for both computers where I want to synchronize. So I'm going to go to my downloads, and I'm going to double click Install for all users. Again, I need to provide administrator permissions or credentials. I'm going to click Next, and I'm just going to accept all of the defaults, just like on client 1 machine. Okay. So while that's completing the install, what I want to do is actually I want to share my documents folder between machines. So I'm going to actually go to see users. My username is, for this example, is K Dyer and documents. And you can see I have some files in here. I have my how-to document, and I have a couple other test 0 and test 1 files in here. So what I want to do is I actually want to share this folder between computers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click my documents folder from here and say Properties. And I'm going to go to the Security tab. And what we need to do is when we install as a service, Syncthing installs a local account called Syncthing Service, ACCT, or Syncthing Service account. And we need to be able to go out there and grant that service account permission to modify the folders. So this is actually a local account. So I'm going to click the computer name, and I'm going to put in the username, Syncthing Service ACCT, check names, and you can see there's the account. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click Modify and OK. These are just links that we don't need to worry about errors on. We'll just continue past them. And you can see here the Syncthing Service account now has Modify on my Documents folder. Okay, that's where I want to share. Now over here on Client 2, we're going to, the install finished, we're going to start the service. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to users, and we're going to find the Documents folder, and we're going to grant that service account permission on the security tab. So we're going to click Edit, and we're going to add, and since I'm on a domain, I'm going to click the computer name. If you're not on a domain, you won't need that step. Okay, and check names. Okay, we're going to grant modify permission, and we're going to continue past those link errors, which is fine. And you can see the modify permission is now set on the Documents folder. So now going back to Client 1, at this point we have Syncthing running on both computers, and we just need to specify the configuration. So we're going to go to All Apps in Windows 11, or wherever you go to find your list of programs that are installed, under the Syncthing folder, and open the configuration page. And this warning is simply saying that the HTTPS, it's using secure web interface, but the Edge browser doesn't know the certificate, and that's okay because it is a self-signed certificate. That error is expected. So I'm going to click the Advanced and Continue. Okay, and now it's going to prompt whether I want to perform anonymous usage reporting for Syncthing data collection. I'm going to go ahead and say no. And I also want to click Settings for the username and password for the GUI. So I'm going to go to Settings, click the GUI tab, and provide credentials here. Once I set this, it will prompt me to log on with those credentials, which I just entered. Okay, and sign in. So now we have Syncthing running on Client 1, but it's paused because there's no folders or anything for it to take any synchronization actions on. I'm going to close these other tabs. And the first thing I'm going to do is I want to add this Documents folder to the configuration, this folder here. So I'm going to copy this path actually, and I'm going to add it as a folder. And Syncthing will provide a sort of random string of characters as the folder identifier. Whatever the folder identifier you use has to be unique across all of your synchronization. So I recommend leaving the actual folder ID as the default. And you'll see as the folder path, because it's running as the service account, it suggests a path for the service account, but I don't actually want that. I want to synchronize this folder here because I granted the service account permission. So I'm going to copy that folder path, and I'm going to go and paste it in here. Okay, and that will save it. Now this folder is, as it says, is currently unshared. The next step we want to do is we want to add that same folder on the other end on Client 2. So we're going to go ahead and bring up the configuration page. We'll find under our installed programs, configuration page. And we'll do the same steps here as we did on Client 1. We're going to go ahead and allow the connection. And we're going to say no to data collection, and we're going to specify the GUI credentials. Okay. And save, and it's going to prompt me to log on with the credentials I just added. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing as we're going to add, only the difference here is since this is going to be a synchronized folder, we need to use the same folder ID. This is a different, because it's on Client 2, Syncthing generated a different folder identifier. So we actually need the same folder ID. So what we're going to do is we're going to say edit, and we're going to copy. And actually, I'm going to call this folder after the folder name that I'm sharing. I'm going to call it documents. And then I'm going to copy this folder identifier and save that. And you can see it's now called documents. Okay. And I'm going to go back to, I'm actually going to paste that ID, and I'm going to also call it documents on the other side. The folder ID has to match, and we also want the path to match, or whatever folder I want on the other side. So I'm going to copy that, okay, and I'm going to paste that in there. So I'm going to share. It's going to use the same folder ID on both sides, okay. And so now both client 1, this is client 2 here, and here going back to client 1, they both say it's an unshared folder. So now we need to add the devices. Both computers need to see each other as a remote device. So if each computer has its own identifier, just like folders, and if you click under the actions and show ID, you'll see this this computer starts with IT6, okay, and on the other side, client 2, actions show ID, this one is EROJI7R, okay. So when we go back to client 1, we're going to add a remote device, and we will see this identifier. This is client 2 that we just looked at. So we're going to go ahead and add that, and then we want to share. What folder do I want to share? I'm going to go ahead and click Share Documents with Client 2 and save. Now, when I go over to Client 2, you will see a prompt in the interface that Client 1 wants to share, and it tells me the client ID, which you can validate by going to the identifier under Actions. This is Client 1, right? And we look over at Client 2, and Client 2 is saying, oh, this guy wants to connect to me. So we're going to go ahead and add, and we're going to share, and we're going to share documents, just like on the other side. And so now, when I look on Client 2 in my documents, what Syncthing has gone out there and done is it's copied my how-to document and test 0 and test 1, and over from client 1, and if I go back in client 1, we'll close this, go look back at documents, it copied test 3 and test 4 from client 2. Okay, so it's synchronizing the folders. And the nice thing too is if I look on client 2 and if I sign off, and let's say I create a folder here, a new a document, let's say test 10, and we're going to put some text in there, test 10, right? And we're going to save it. So now in our shared folders we have my how-to doc 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 10. Now if we look back over here, no one's logged on, right? But I'm going to go ahead and log on now. Oops, wrong password. Log back on onto client 2, which we can see here if we go down to my about. This is client 2, and we look here. And if we go into documents, we should see that file 10 added. And there it is. If we look in open it up, there it is, test 10. So what I was demonstrating there is that the synchronization happens between the two computers even though no one was logged on. So that's the advantage of using the Windows service. So if you look here back on client 1, you'll see the documents folder is shared, the path, and the folder ID, and the computer that it's shared with. And if you look on the other end of the connection, we'll bring the configuration page back up. We'll find it under Syncthing and the configuration page. And again, I have to log in because I had logged off a moment ago. Right? And we look at the documents. It's the share path. The folder path is here. The folder ID is here, and you can see that it's shared with client 1. So any files I add or delete on either side will get synchronized between the two computers, even if no one's logged on. And you can see the if you open up services on the computer and click on that, you will see the Syncthing service as an installed Windows service. And if you are an administrator, you can stop and restart and so forth. And if you look in the service, you'll see on the logon that it's running as that service account, which is why we need to go in there and grant the permissions on the documents folder right here. Right? We had to grant that service account permission. And any folders that you want to sync, you'll need to go in here and specify the modify permissions for the service account for it to be able to synchronize them back and forth. Okay, so I hope that this tutorial is helpful to you in showing how to install and run Syncthing as a service on Windows.